And in Casino especially, based on true stories or aspects of true stories, everybody pays. If you take everything that we have today, you could make an updating of this, and with the technology.
Martin Scorsese nearly walked away from one of his most ambitious films, not because of the studio, not because of the budget, but because of one actress. She was unpredictable, bold, and completely unlike anyone he'd worked with before. And yet, he took a chance on her, a decision that would haunt him throughout production. The film would go on to become a classic, but what happened behind the scenes was pure chaos. So why did Scorsese come so close to regretting it all? The answer might change the way you see this movie forever. Casting this role was a disaster. Dozens of actresses had been considered, but none of them fit. Scorsese was clear. He didn't want just another beautiful face. He needed someone electric, someone who could explode on screen and leave scars. The character was messy, manipulative, self-destructive, and tragic all at once. She wasn't supposed to be likable. She was supposed to be unforgettable. And no one was delivering that until she came along. But even then, no one wanted her. The studio had doubts. She had a reputation. Too difficult, too demanding, too unpredictable. Twice, her audition was scheduled, and twice, it was mysteriously canceled. Whether it was politics or hesitation, no one would say. But she got the message. So she sent one back. Don't call me again unless you're serious. It wasn't arrogance. It was survival. In an industry that chews up women the second they stop smiling, she had learned to push back hard. Scorsese, curious now, decided to meet her face to face. And what happened in that room would end the debate instantly. She didn't act. She didn't rehearse. She became the character. Loud, magnetic, a total wildfire. One moment she was seductive, the next, terrifying. And when it was over, no one could breathe. Scorsese said it felt like she'd hijacked the script right out of his hands. She didn't just read the role, she rewrote it with her presence. The role was hers. There was no second choice. But while the camera would capture one of the most iconic performances in modern cinema, behind the scenes, things were already unraveling. The real story was just beginning, and Scorsese had no idea what he'd signed up for. The cameras were rolling, the lights were hot, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. But almost immediately, the warning signs began to show. She was brilliant. There was no denying that. Every take had a kind of dangerous magic, but that intensity came at a cost. Early into the shoot, she started having back problems. Long hours in heavy gowns, endless retakes under scorching lights. It pushed her body to the limit. Some days, she'd be lying on the floor between takes, just trying to keep going. Meanwhile, production was battling chaos on another front. The film was being shot in a real Las Vegas casino during actual business hours. And the people Scorsese had to work around. High-rolling gamblers the casino refused to relocate. Imagine trying to direct one of the most high-pressure films of your career while dodging slot machines, whispering over table games, and halting scenes every time someone walked into frame. It was hell. Scorsese had worked in tough environments before, but this was different. The energy was erratic, the schedule was a mess, and at the center of it all was his lead actress, hurting, unpredictable, and pushing herself to the edge. Every day felt like a gamble, but then she'd deliver a scene so raw, so explosive, that the entire set would fall silent. Scorsese couldn't look away, and when it came time to film the transformation, the unraveling of her character, it wasn't just convincing, it was haunting. She didn't play the role, she became it. The character she was portraying, a volatile, spiraling hustler wrapped in diamonds and danger, was based on a real person, and she wanted to honor that truth. So she did the homework, dug into reports, talked to people who had actually known the woman behind the legend, not the glamorous version, the real, unfiltered one. Her process wasn't polished or polite. She clashed with designers over every accessory, every thread of fabric. If it didn't feel real, she wouldn't wear it. And when the final look came together, those rhinestone-studded gowns, fur coats, and impossible heels, she didn't just look the part, she felt it. The set became an emotional battlefield. One day she'd be charming everyone, glowing with energy. The next, she'd vanish behind closed doors, drained from the emotional weight of the scenes. Crew members whispered about her volatility. Some said she was unprofessional. Others said she was just too deep in the character to come back out. But whatever people said behind her back, when the camera turned on, none of it mattered. Scorsese knew he was capturing something you couldn't fake. This wasn't just performance, it was combustion. And yet, the deeper she went, the more unstable everything around her became. The question wasn't whether she could pull off the role. It was whether she'd survive it. By the time filming wrapped, everyone was exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally. The project had taken a toll on the entire crew, but no one more than her. She had given everything. Not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes too, battling pain, stress, and the unrelenting pressure to deliver something unforgettable. And she had, but not without consequences. Rumors started circulating almost immediately. Some said she was impossible to work with. Others claimed she clashed with producers, stormed off set, even disappeared without warning. The press painted her as unstable, difficult, the kind of actress you only hire once. Scorsese never publicly fired back. But in interviews years later, he hinted that the experience was unlike anything he'd ever faced. That directing this film had been more psychologically intense than any gangster story he'd ever told. And for a man who's worked with Hollywood's most explosive talents, that says a lot. Still, he never denied her brilliance. In fact, he admitted it outright. No one else could have played the role like she did, but that didn't mean it was easy, or that he'd ever want to go through it again. In private, some say he described the process as a beautiful nightmare, a masterpiece wrapped in chaos. The film was done, but the emotional wreckage it left behind, that would linger long after the lights went out. When Casino finally hit theaters in late 1995, no one was prepared for what they were about to see. The movie wasn't just another crime epic. It was operatic, lavish, brutal, a slow-motion explosion set to neon lights and Sinatra. And at the center of all that chaos was her. Audiences were stunned. Some loved her, some hated her, but no one could ignore her. Critics who once doubted her tore up their early takes. Suddenly, the same people calling her difficult were now using words like fearless and career-defining. She was nominated for a Golden Globe and earned her first and only Oscar nomination. But the recognition came with an edge. Behind the smile she wore on red carpets was someone still shaken by what it took to get there. Years later, she would describe the role as too real. The emotional trauma, the physical toll, it lingered. She said the character followed her home, stayed in her skin. This wasn't just a role, it was a possession. For Scorsese, the aftermath was equally complicated. He got the film he wanted, no doubt, but the experience changed how he approached actors forever. While he praised her performance publicly, he became noticeably cautious about working with emotionally intense talent again, not because he doubted their abilities, but because he had seen what it could do to them and to himself. To this day, Casino is often grouped with Goodfellas and The Irishman as part of Scorsese's crime saga. But Casino stands apart, not just for its setting or story, but for the raw nerve running through it. A pulse that came from one performance and nearly unraveled everything. It's the kind of legacy no one predicts. A masterpiece that almost didn't survive its own making. Casino dazzled, it disturbed, and it endured. On the surface, it's a film about power, greed, and the high-stakes world of Las Vegas in its most decadent era. But look deeper, and you'll find a story about control and the cost of losing it. The actress, at the heart of it, delivered one of the most dangerous performances of her career. She bled for that role, not literally, but emotionally, spiritually. She went places most actors wouldn't dare. And Martin Scorsese? He got a career-defining performance, but it came at a personal price. One that didn't show up in box office numbers or award speeches. One that only he, and maybe she, truly understood. The pressure, the chaos, the raw vulnerability. It all stayed under the surface, unspoken. And that's the part audiences never see. We celebrate the outcome. We rewatch the scenes. We quote the lines. But rarely do we talk about what it costs to make something great. Scorsese has worked with legends. He's captured violence, addiction, betrayal, and death. But in Casino, The most volatile thing on set wasn't the mob. It was the woman he almost didn't cast. And decades later, one truth still lingers quietly in the shadows of that film. Sometimes, the most unforgettable role come with a price no one talks about. Not in interviews, not in memoirs, not even years later. But you can feel it if you watch closely. Because Casino isn't just a film, it's a beautiful, brutal reminder of how far great artists will go and what they sometimes lose along the way.